Okay, trustees, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines are open. You are good to go.
Welcome, everybody, to the East Hampton Town Trustees regular meeting of January 24th. And I'd like to open with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Arlene, can you do roll call, please?
Certainly. John Aldred, Francis Bach,
Here.
David Cataletto,
Here.
Ben Dollinger, Tim Garneau,
Here.
Jim Grimes. I think we said hello to him. Susan McGraw-Keeber,
Here.
Mike Martinson.
Mike won't be here.
Okay, and Bill Taylor.
Hi, here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll go into public comment. We have a presentation from Dr. Joyce Novak from the Acabonic Estuary Program. Joyce, are you here?
She's connecting.
Just give her a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, looks cold there, Susan.
It is.
A sweater and everything.
Yes.
But Joyce, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Joyce.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So we'd like to open up with your presentation.
Okay. I will share my screen here.
Joyce, would you introduce yourself to us? To the public?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let me put up my first slide while I do that. There we go. So my name is Joyce Novak. I'm the executive director of the Acabonic Estuary Partnership. And I'm just going to go down to, I've been the director of the partnership since early 2018. And I'm not going to go through this whole slide, but for those of you that are unaware, the National Estuary Program is not a nonprofit entity. We're authorized under Section 320 of the Clean Water Act with the sole purpose of working with partners to protect and restore the nationally significant estuary that is the Peconics. So we were designated in 1993, and we are a partnership of local government, state government, Suffolk County government, the Environmental Protection Agency, nonprofits, and academic partners. So I'll just start with that. Does anybody have any questions about the organization? Because sometimes people don't really know what we do. I'm going to get into quite a bit of what we've done this past couple of years and what we plan to do. Okay, then I will just continue. So I'm going to jump right in with what we're up to. So we started and coordinated the Peconic Bay Scallop Technical Review Committee in 2019, a result of the first die-off. We hold biannual meetings. The general purpose of these meetings is to bring all of the experts together to explore the different factors that are affecting the Peconic Bay scallop. As we all know, the 2019-2020 die-off were extremely bad, and 2021 seemed to be getting even worse with 100% mortality in many of the sites. So we are working with our partners to look at this really in-depthly. This group, in part, the push from the members of this group, notably the county and the state, led to a disaster relief that was declared. So DEC is DEC is developing a recovery plan to use the funds that were earmarked for the Peconic oyster scallops. We worked with DEC to move more than $600,000 into research, which went to Stony Brook and Cornell Cooperative Extension on scallop work. And we've coordinated our own priorities to focus on scallop recovery efforts. We've just completed a nitrogen load cost assessment project throughout the Peconics. That is all towns. It's not live yet. It will be a tool where municipalities and individuals can look at best management practices with a cost built into it to see if it is cost effective to use things like nature-based solutions for nutrient reduction. We do use our funds to pay for the USGS continuous monitoring stations. We have one at Orient, we have one at Riverhead. We've just installed a tide gauge in Shelter Island on the Shelter Island Sound, in Southampton and Shelter Island waters, and we'll put water quality monitoring equipment on that. That will be a triangulation of the Peconics, and we hope that it will be really useful for all of our partners to get up to the minute water quality data. It's particularly useful in things like the scallop die-off, because you can look at the water quality and temperature parameters day and night with the readings. We are heavily involved in fish pass projects throughout the Peconic. Although these projects are located in individual towns, namely Southampton and Riverhead, this benefits the alewife population. Alewife are a food fish for larger species throughout the Peconic and a base in the food chain. This picture that you see here is Woodhole Dam, which is currently under construction, and we're finalizing the permits at Upper Mills Dam. This is pretty cool. This was given to us from Chris Paparo. For those of you who know him, he has Fish Guy photos online. And so this is the Woodhole Dam Fish Pass. It's due to be complete in mid-March to allow for the spring alewife run. We're really excited about this. We put cameras on the completed runs to monitor the populations. We're also doing some work on Lake Montauk. We have a project at Big Reed Pond on the east end underway to right-size culverts, allowing for alewife migration. And we are working with partner at Stepping Stones Pond for the western side of the culverts into Stepping Stones from Lake Montauk. Again, this has allowed us to look at the alewife populations. It's a huge benefit to the entire Peconics. The run was estimated at 57,000 based on the cameras and the monitors at Grangeable Park. We're hoping that we'll get better estimates once Woodhole is up and running this spring. Which leads us to the ecosystem study that we have underway with some researchers at Stony Brook. This is using some of our New York State funding that we get directly under the EPF line. We're funding an ecosim model. This is going to look at all major ecosystem functional groups in the Peconics. It's going to identify structural changes and responses of species to environmental change. We'll identify vulnerable species and allow us to make management decisions to protect the Peconics. Locally to East Hampton, we are working with many, many partners, as some of you know, on the Acabonic Marsh restoration. Through Suffolk County funds, we get a portion of Suffolk County capital funds to PEP. We're dedicating some of those to the conceptual designs, along with the Nature Conservancy, who's dedicating funds to this. And we're working out how to move this project forward with conceptual designs. We're really excited about this. It's been a long time coming. As some of you may know, the Long Island Tidal Wetland Trends Analysis carried out a couple of years ago by New York State indicated that Acabonic Harbor experienced more than 46 acres of high marsh loss between 1974 and 2005. So this is a critical habitat for us, and one that is tied for residents to coastal resilience as well. We have initiated a horseshoe crab restoration and protection strategy. We formed a work group to start looking at this, and we've recently funded a fellowship to a woman named Abigail Costigan at the Marine Conservation Master's Program at Stony Brook to work with some of our technical advisory committee members on horseshoe crab restoration. Largely what this will look like is, and again, you'll hear about this a lot in my presentation, hardened shorelines versus soft shorelines. Horseshoe crab habitat needs soft, sandy shorelines, and they are disappearing rapidly in the Peconics. We also have a seagrass work group throughout the East End, where we're working with our partners to look at areas of cool water refugia. to allow for eelgrass populations. I'm sure you are aware that eelgrass population has declined by more than 85%. Some of this historically has been a function of disease and pollution. Unfortunately, now it's potentially tied to climate change and changing temperatures. And we are working with some of our academic partners to look at solutions to this. There's genetic breeding of grasses and potentially using grasses from southern seed sources and exploring other solutions to this problem. Eelgrass is an extremely important nursery habitat in the Peconics. And so what do we have on deck for 2022 and beyond? We'll be looking at climate adaptation. We're forming a work group in conjunction with Sea Grant to bring together all of our partners to continue to look at climate adaptation in our waters. And that includes putting together a siting tool for natural shoreline work. We hear a lot about living shorelines and alternatives to bulkheads. These are very site specific, and each site requires different solutions based on wave energy. So we're really working hard to roll out a tool that helps our partners make these decisions. I know that trustees in many towns are faced with this decision every day, and it's extremely difficult. We do have a demonstration project for very low energy systems in Southold, which we will be organizing a tour for, and we'll invite all of the trustees of East Hampton to see this once the grasses start to grow again and the weather gets a little bit warmer, so you can really see it in action. We will be funding an aquaculture impact study. We're really excited about this. It's geared towards oyster aquaculture. This is a phase 1. In phase 2, we're hoping to potentially build in kelp aquaculture with this as well, looking at somewhere between 8 and 12 areas around oyster cages with a series of telemetry and cameras to establish the ecology and look at the various impacts that the cages have. And we'll be moving forward with some new HABs work. We really want to focus in on species that have been more prevalent and look at nutrient thresholds during different time periods of the year. So some things that tie into all of the projects that I just talked about. We completed a hardened shoreline assessment, and I'll just talk a little bit about the East Hampton work that we did. We did this work first in 2001. It was published in 2003. And we wanted to update it as we approached 2020. So we started in 2019. We looked at docks, piers, breakwaters, groins, revetments, bulkheads, things that were unknown, and jetties. You can see here, this is the zoomed out version of East Hampton. From this alone, it's quite obvious that revetments are extensive in this area, along with groins. We have the GIS layers attached to this, which we will happily share with every town to use as they see fit. It's a pretty extensive set of GIS tools that hopefully the towns can use outright or build on if they want to do annual assessments of these areas. Just a snippet of the results in East Hampton. So I have a big red X for the dock numbers. The original estimate of docks was overestimated by 50%. We are going back to that, but upon first review, it's approximately half this original. So even if the docks increase, and this is linear feet, to 30,000 and not the 64,000 originally noted in this report, that's still an increase of 600% from the numbers that were counted in the 2003 report. Remember, the 2003 report uses 2001 maps. So it is 20 years ago, but it's still a substantial increase. The number that we have had looked at in East Hampton by 2 independent reviewers besides ourselves is the bulkheads. The linear feet of hardened shoreline has about a 300% increase. Because this has had substantial review, we're quite confident in this number. And really what it tells us is we are running out of natural shorelines quite quickly. We have yet to ground truth this, which we will be working to do either with drones or with sample sizes in person using vessels on the water. But the imagery that was used for this assessment is quite good, and we are quite confident that this number is accurate. We also produced a critical lands protection strategy in 2019. We'll be rolling out training. I'll give this presentation to you when I'm finished. There is an instructional video here on our YouTube channel where we did an hour-long training on this, so that is there as is. But this is, again, a series of GIS layers, series of GIS layers that looks at all of the land uses. It looks at developed, undeveloped, and agricultural parcels and prioritizes places for acquisition. Looking at wetland migration, sea level rise increases, inundation, and depth to groundwater in all of our towns. This was designed to be something, again, that we can give to the towns for planning purposes. It is a very good tool. I had wanted to go through the online version with you. I apologize. I'm not in the office and my GIS is not working from home very well. But it is something that we can most definitely set up training both with the consultant who helped us design this and our staff. This will be part of what I'd like to do as part of trustee training, get a little bit into what is available, the tools that are available at your disposal currently that we've produced. And then I'm just going to move into, we agreed upon last year priority areas in all of our towns so we can really focus in to see where we can have the best impacts. In East Hampton, we'll be prioritizing Acabonic Harbor. The current subwatershed plan that we have for Acabonic Harbor from 2013, in conjunction with the Suffolk County subwatershed plan, estimates that 42% of nitrogen load reduction can be reached by changing out on-site wastewater management. It's pretty substantial. And so we will continue to focus our community outreach in our priority areas, in addition to the large marsh restoration that we're going to be moving forward here. In Sag Harbor, we're including both East Hampton and Southampton together to look at this area more comprehensively. So the Sag Harbor Havens Beach area. Again, an area that estimates almost 50% of nutrient reduction can be achieved by upgrading septic systems. It's a pretty substantial number. We're working with the town here, the village of Sag Harbor and the Harbor Committee on some stormwater management projects as well. And 3 Mile Harbor. This is a well-characterized area. That means that there's a lot of known information about the area and the hydrology. There is a nitrogen load reduction associated with this area. What you're seeing in all of these maps, and I apologize for not pointing this out in the beginning, the pink areas are the 2 to 10 year travel times, and the green areas closer to the water are the 0 to 2 year travel times taken from the subwatershed plan. Projects that are planned here, potentially kelp farms, aquaculture committee work, and the submarine groundwater discharge. So we have devoted some money, and I have question marks because kelp and aquaculture are not something we do, but as things we've heard partners will be doing in this area. For us directly, we've devoted a portion of our 2022 funds to look at submarine groundwater discharge. We know that the Peconics are groundwater fed. We also know that there's a series of inputs in our embayments where this fresh water is coming in. We don't really know much about them. We're going to start in 3 Mile Harbor and try and pinpoint some of these areas and where this fresh water comes in. As you know, there's many stakeholders to this, including yourselves, Town of East Hampton, the Suffolk County, and other community members and HOAs. So that was all I had today. I know that was a lot of information crammed in. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to take those.
Anybody?
Well, hey, I'm sorry. I'm doing this over the phone, so I missed the beginning part of your presentation. Who's doing the presentation here? I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Joyce Novak. I'm the Executive Director of the Peconic National Estuary Program.
Sure. Hey, what I think what particularly I have an interest in is, we're in the process of trying to inventory all of our dock structures on 3 Mile Harbor, Georgia, and any of our water bodies. The data that you've collected on that, if that's shared, I think that could be a huge use for us in putting together, because we're trying to come up with sort of a long-range policy towards docks and structures. And part of that is we need to know what's truly out there so we can evaluate. We routinely get these applications that come over. Sometimes they come over existing. And, when you start looking at aerials and that, you realize that the dock that you're reviewing or the structure that you're reviewing is not the structure that was originally permitted. And, our board has an institutional memory is based on the membership here. And a lot of times it's hard to comb out exactly when did that structure enlarge, how did it enlarge, what year, and the circumstances, so that we can manage our shorelines and stuff better than perhaps previous boards.
So I would just like to offer, as you say that, all of these GIS layers I can make available to you, both for the critical lands protection and for the hardened shoreline assessment. It is always our hope we do this work with public funds, and we want it to be as widely used as possible, right? We don't want to retain this and have it sit on a website. So I hope that it does serve as a baseline for you. You will have the layers that we have and the years that are attached to the imagery, so you can continue that and try and, make your own assessments.
Joyce, you mentioned earlier in your presentation that you would not only make this available, and we've spoken about it, which is great, because we do have a moratorium in place for any future docks for a year, which we voted on at the end of December. But you mentioned that there would be an opportunity for trustees to learn how to use the program. And is that something that you would organize with both Southampton and East Hampton trustees, or maybe even Southold trustees?
Yeah, absolutely. I think our plan was to go into the towns separately, but we can certainly do groups of trustees. I had 2 lines of ideas that I've been working with my outreach coordinator on. And yes, Susan, we have talked about this, and I'm so glad you have such a great interest in this. And the hope is that we can do a field trip to the demonstration site in Southold, and then as well have a training on these GIS layers. There is a web map that's fairly easy to use for the critical land protection strategy. We're currently updating the layers, so it's not live at this moment, but we would like to work with the East Hampton trustees and, yes, have a personal training where everybody can be made aware of what is there at their disposal to make decisions. The entire driver of this is to make better decisions.
Okay, I think for our purposes, having the East Hampton Town trustees, because we do have the moratorium in place, would be beneficial to us to just focus in on our bodies of water in particular, so that we have a better handle on what is out there. And we're trying to figure out who is permitted, who is not. As Jim just described, is it the same permit for this, the permit that we issued, was it the same size then as it is now? And if not, then we have to decide how to handle that. But I think this is a wonderful program, and I'm very excited about it. And thank you so much for coming to show it to us.
Thank you for having me, and reach out any time with questions, please. I know you, Susan, and John are very involved in the program. But yeah, I mean, if anybody else has questions specific to the area, we are really sort of at the phase where we're digging in East Hampton especially. You know, the water quality issues are not throughout the main portion of the bay, but in the embayments. And that's what we're really moving into with these hardened shorelines and water quality issues.
Hey, Joyce, and Ellinger, I just have a quick question. With the hardened shorelines, it seems we come across a lot of homeowners that have waterfront properties that are really torn if they should go with a permanent bulkhead structure or do something a little more environmentally friendly. But they're so concerned about their homes and their safety that it's a very emotional decision for them. So if we had more information for them to be able to make an informed decision, I feel like that's where this is going, and this could be very helpful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is emotional. It's very difficult. I will say two things. One, there has to be a critical eye toward if there are no adjacent bulkheads, putting one in will eventually force the other ones to be bulkheaded, right? So understanding that even though that's emotional, it is a domino effect. And making hard decisions, which is why we have that critical land protection strategy. There are areas where natural solutions will not be enough. And we need to understand where those are and where we have the ability to encourage people to keep it natural.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's a good thing because, unfortunately, it tends to fall into a one-size-fits-all. I know locally our legislators, our local planning and stuff really pushes applicants into a soft structure. And sometimes it truly doesn't make sense. And unfortunately, when you're doing that, you kind of degrade the thought process for everything else because there's plenty of times where a soft application is adequate and having an understanding of those thresholds and the geographic locations that those solutions make the best sense, I think then the next step, you can start to come up with ways of incentivizing the public, perhaps to remove some structures that are pre-existing, so that you can perhaps arrest or even reverse that domino effect.
I agree. There's a great example on Dune Road in Southampton where the town removed, I think it was 3 homes and associated bulkheads. And within one season, the amount of wetlands that are coming back to that area is quite remarkable, on the bay side.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that area, and that is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think that offers a great, almost, it's not like they had to install a nature-based solution. Nature did its own job. And so really that's what I'm hoping. We will be working with Sea Grant on what we're calling a siting tool. So areas where this is potentially possible, as opposed to areas where wave action will require a different solution.
Joyce, on the November 17th agenda, I think there was, so many people presented, but there was an area, I think on the North Fork that had been worked on and it was a soft shore solution. And I think it's on a video, if I'm not mistaken, or was it just slides? Yeah. But I think that's a very interesting presentation that maybe we might want to offer on our own website to show people alternatives, because it was a beautiful construction of the beach where the plantings were separated from each other every so few feet. And I don't know if that's possible to have that presentation added to our website, but I think if more people are educated about what the alternatives are, they may be very well open to not going with hard revetment. So is that possible to, I have the program from that date and there I can give you any presentations that you'd like to put on your website. That particular site is a really big success. It's a very low energy area. We've actually, as a result, gotten several homeowners in areas that want to get together and remove their bulkheads and install this type of thing. So it's looking like there is a public interest. I mean, we have had a lot of
calls about this, and I know Cornell has as well. So I think that is a solution for low energy that has good potential for sure. And yes, I will give you that presentation.
Thank you. I think it's Steve Schott, Living Shoreline Project Successes, Hiccups and Lessons Learned. That was right after your presentation of shoreline hardening from the 17th. I'll email you and pull this up, but thank you very much. Do you want to pull this down so we can see you? Because this is showing totally on the screen. There you go. I have a question about the horseshoe crabs. Are you doing that with Cornell, or is that separate with Peconic Estuary? Because we, as trustees, have been involved with Cornell doing the horseshoe crab. In fact, Tim over here, who's muted himself, was in charge. There you go. Tim was very active with the horseshoe crabs last year. And then prior to that, John and I were doing Northwest, and it was very interesting. But I'm wondering, is that in conjunction with Cornell?
Yes. So the chair of our technical advisory committee is Matt Sclafani, who runs the horseshoe crab program. So this is working with his shop and with DEC, who also, co-runs the horseshoe crab program, to really, they're a little bit troubled, again, at this habitat loss that's occurring so quickly. And so really it's going to be bringing a work group together to try and come up with prioritized areas of prime habitat that we can focus on, and build that into our work. We also host in Southampton the Squires Pond site, so we are very involved with them. We are not involved in the the scientific evaluation. That is Matt at Cornell, but we will be working very closely with him on this strategy.
Great.
That's awesome.
And
Does anybody else have questions?
No, but I mean, this sounds like a project we'll be part of, and we'll stay coordinated.
I'm very excited about the Acabonic restoration. Do you want to talk a little bit about the with Dr. Nicole Marr, her group of people that you and I had discussed about planning a plan to begin this project, and what that entails?
So we've devoted $50,000 of our Suffolk County capital funds, and the Nature Conservancy has come up with $30,000. We're going to work in tandem to move those funds forward on a conceptual design. So that will involve an engineering design to 30% design. So it's not permit ready, but it looks at the hydrology and the existing natural conditions to work with a stakeholder group to come up with a plan forward. We're hoping to get that off the ground in the next 4 months. And at that point, we will have stakeholder meetings that guide this process. Sometimes when this happens, a consultant will come up with, a couple of different solutions. So the stakeholders come together to decide what's best for the area. There are several landowners there, so, it will get a little complicated with that, but we're really quite optimistic that we'll be able to have a conceptual design well underway in 2022, which will position us to move into funding for final engineering designs and then ultimately construction.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joyce.
Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. Thank you
Thanks,
for
Joyce.
having me.
Yep, thank you.
I'll be in touch. I'll send you an email.
Okay, have a great evening, everybody, and I will pass the presentations to you, Susan, to put up on your website.
Thank you very much.
Have a good
Good night,
night.
everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay. Matt, is there anybody else in the wings?
You have 0 callers. Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to revisit tabled annual resolutions. We have annual resolution number 2022-23. It's page 27. RE, the Harbor Management Committee. So has the committee been able to get together and discuss how to redefine this?
We have not, Frank.
Okay. So we'll table that. The second one was annual resolution 2022-24, pump out boat senior operator wage. Jim, I think they wanted to get some input from you on that.
Yeah, there was confusion as to what the rate actually was, and whether the senior pump out boat manager have, whether that had gone through.
Well, I think as per the discussion we had at 2 meetings ago, it was discussion about the senior pump out operator being compensated at a higher rate, and that was tabled. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. But at the same meeting, I believe we voted to raise the individual operators' compensation package to, I think it was $5 an hour. And Arlene, where does that stand right now?
Yes, it went into effect with their paycheck starting August 1st, that they were raised to $25 an hour, and they've all been paid that. But I think you were under the impression that you had also passed $35 an hour for the senior operator who is going above and beyond and doing things. So that's the piece that we missed. We had gone into discussion. Someone has stepped ahead, and they're obviously the choice. Well, they know what they're doing. Yeah.
All right. Hey, what I do think has happened, and listen, I've only been involved intimately with the pump out boats really the past year. But the one thing I've seen that clearly is necessary is in the past we had an operator who took the lead in the form of organizing the other operators, took the lead in maintenance on the boats, took the lead in schedules and stuff. We have an individual this past season who has kind of, by virtue of her own initiative, took over that slot. And I think it functioned overall pretty well. I would like to legitimize that if we could, and also legitimize it by compensating that as an individual at a greater pay scale. Now, the discussion last year, I believe, Arlene, correct me if I'm wrong, was $35 an hour. And
Yes.
I think that's fair and reasonable, especially for what we got out of the individual. And clearly, what we're trying to do is develop a set of operating guidelines, maintenance and management guidelines for the individual boats, scheduling and stuff for the harbors. And that's really going to be that's critically going to need the input of an individual that works both 3 Mile and Montauk and has an understanding of some administrative skills. And we do have an individual, and if possible, I would like to push that forward right now if we could.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. I have the resolution. Does anybody want me to read it? Or Francis, do you have the resolution in front of you?
Yeah. Hey, Susan, if you could read, I'm not in a position to read any of this stuff. Unfortunately, I locked my
sentence.
It's a short paragraph. I'll read it right now. It says, therefore, be it resolved for 2022, the senior operator shall be paid, and it was originally 25. I crossed it out. We've decided 35 per hour, and a second operator shall be paid $25 per hour for up to 40 hours per week. One part-time operator shall be paid $25 per hour for up to 30 hours per week each. If deemed necessary, An additional part-time operator will be employed at $25 per hour for up to 30 hours a week.
Do we have a motion on this, or do we want to discuss it more?
Yeah, is that a motion, Susan?
I'll make a motion that we agree to this.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, do we want to discuss it? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. That's done. So we still have to get back to the Harbor Management Committee.
John, I think that's falling on you and I. I was away. I'm around. I tried calling you today about some other issues. Maybe we could get together in the next week, or certainly between now and the next meeting.
Okay, I'll try. All right. Yeah, give me a call if you set anything up, Bob.
All right.
All right, let's move on to new business. We have a permit application from Land Use Ecological Services on behalf of Love Shack LLC at 73 Last Point Road, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-83-3-10.2 and 11 for reconstruction of a 205-foot existing bulkhead using vinyl sheathing and using 5 feet of clean fill landward of the bulkhead. I don't quite understand that.
Is he talking about 5 yards?
It says 5 feet.
No, hey Francis, you know what I think that's about is I'm going to guess that the bulkhead's been failing. You probably had some land loss behind the bulkhead.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they're talking about. The sheathing's gone. They've probably been using material either due to overwash or basically the boards in the boards in the sheathing have failed. So every bit of overwash basically takes out material from behind the bulkhead.
Okay. Well, Dave,
Francis, I looked down there. I went down there and walked around, checked it out. And yeah, behind the bulkhead, the current existing bulkhead, there is just some empty space. I guess they're going to fill that in. But yeah, there's definitely like a need for replacement. It looks pretty rotten and old, and especially in the water and along the water line. And there's some really good photos too, which was with the application at the trustee office, and you could see them pretty well there too. Yeah, I would recommend that they get a new bulkhead.
Well, this is one of those things that, hey, who's on that committee?
Myself, Francis, and Mike
Martinson.
Okay, so have you made contact with the applicant or the applicant's agent?
Who, me?
I'm talking to anybody on that committee.
Yeah, I have not.
Oh, okay. So before you move this thing forward, the standard protocol here is do not fly blind. Don't just look at the application. Set up a meeting with the applicant's agent. Go through the process of what they had in mind. Meet on site. That's the best way of answering all of your questions and coming back to the board as a whole with good information and good recommendations.
Okay.
And the other thing is, as far as when we visit properties, going to and visiting a private property by yourself, unannounced, unaccompanied by either the owner, the agent, or their attorney, while it may be legal, it probably could be considered a little bit rude. We had been over the last 6 years trying to have a policy where we interact with the applicants, and we're not the Gestapo. We're not there to inspect other things beyond the application. And it's always very polite to reach out to the applicant, and you'll answer more questions that way. It creates a nice atmosphere for either moving the application forward or adjusting the application to accommodate any of our concerns.
Also, has this gone before the, is there an opinion from the planning board or the zoning board? Anything that, any other decisions or opinions?
Susan?
From,
No, these were just submitted December 1st.
okay.
Yeah. Hey, Susan, that's a good
Yes.
point, but all those things typically we get answered when we meet with an applicant and we're looking at the site in real time.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, so this is, I mean, the application just came in. We'll look at it and process it.
Okay. So we also received an application from First Coastal on behalf of George and Susan Polsky at 133 Waters Edge Road, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-83-7-53.1 to construct in place 160 feet of existing bulkhead, construct 14 feet return, and install 4-foot wide ladder to the beach. So this would be handled the same way. David, I know you went down and took a look at this also, right?
Yeah, I did. I was just trying to be proactive, but I guess we should meet and do that all together with the owners.
Is the wide ladder request, that's a new addition, yes, David? Or there's no ladder there now that needs to be replaced, right?
Yeah, the ladder seems fine. It was just the bulkhead, as far as I understand.
It says, and install 4 feet wide ladder to the beach. So I was just curious if there's already a ladder there.
Yeah, there is a ladder there from the property. It's pretty high up.
A retractable one, is it?
Does that go straight off the bulkhead, or is there a landing and it goes parallel with the bulkhead?
It goes. I think it goes. There's a landing.
Yeah, usually those are. They usually don't. The ZBA and DC typically don't want you to run that ladder sort of out to sea. They wanted you to come off a landing and either go right or left parallel with the bulkhead. Nowadays, usually if it's not in place now on new applications, typically they're going to ask for like an aluminum detachable ladder so that seasonally it can be removed. So it's not a navigation hazard or a health hazard in the event of a storm.
And that's why I asked if it's a retractable ladder. I've always found it to be really helpful to take pictures of things too with my iPhone. So if we need to see something, the rest of the board, that's just me.
Yeah, good call.
The applications just came in, so we'll move on them.
You were out there in the freezing wind gusts, David, right? Cold.
Yeah, it was pretty nippy down there.
So are these going to be tabled for further, for more information?
Yes. I mean, this ladder on the drawings appears to me to be actually a ladder attached to the bulkhead. Not like a diagonal stair. It just drops straight down.
With a comes over the edge of the bulkhead.
Yes.
Yeah. It's the least obtrusive way of doing it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we'll table both of these.
I just had a quick question. If the Acabonic Harbor Committee, obviously this is kind of in our wheelhouse, but it's not in Acabonic Harbor.
Yeah, I'm not so sure if it's in the right place either, David.
I just didn't know where that jurisdiction ends. If it's kind of.
Yeah.
This is along the bluffs in Barnes Landing. So
Yeah, we've been putting that into, Susan McGraw-Keeber just approved Billy Mack's 123 Waters Edge Road with the 1.5 they wanted to raise it. Susan, this is right up the street. A few houses up. And then like Devon Yacht Club gets Snapeak. So yeah, we cut it off around there.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Old business, committee reports, aquaculture. We have a scalp update. John?
Sure. Can I be heard?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. If I
Yeah,
cut
everything's
out,
fine on this end.
what's that?
Everything's fine on this end.
Okay, let's hope it stays that way here. This is just there was a notice put out by the Suffolk County Aquaculture Lease Program for an informational meeting for prospective new lease applicants for leases in the bay for oyster culture. These leases applications have been put on hold for the last couple of years because of the 10-year review of the program. So this is the first time in a couple of years that leases will be available. And this meeting is really to explain to people the process. And it'll be held February 3rd at 6 o'clock. It's a Zoom meeting. And there's a need to register in advance for anybody who wants to attend. And that the information from the Zoom meeting can be gotten from the Suffolk County Aquaculture Lease website. The easiest way to access that would be to just search for Suffolk County Aquaculture. It's usually the first site that pops up. And we may be able to put it on our website. I'll see if that can be put on there in a timely fashion.
John, just for a moment, I posted that article. It's on our website currently with the link.
Okay.
And I also sent it out to everybody here so that you'd know about it as well.
All
But
right.
it is up on the website.
And at that meeting, the DC will be present to explain the permit process. Quite often applicants think that there's only one process, and that's acquiring a lease, and are a little bit surprised to find out the extensive permitting they need to actually begin growing oysters in the bay. So the DC will be explaining that process at this informational meeting as well. So that's it in a nutshell.
I'd like to also add, I did add it to our social media as well, the information, the article, and that also has the link in it.
Okay. Conic Estuary website, internet, we're going to table that for now. Is that correct, Susan?
Yeah, I emailed everybody, so
Okay.
it's okay. That's done.
All right. Unless anybody has anything else, we'll go on to administrative.
Yeah, I just wanted, Joyce covered basically the most of the presentation from the Conic Estuary program, but there was one thing that came up at the last management committee meeting that it was a chime in from Sarah Lansdale, the Suffolk County Planning Director, on kelp aquaculture. And I know Sarah, Joyce touched on kelp aquaculture as part of the scalp process, but there'll be Sarah Lansdale explained that there'll be a special sort of an informational meeting, another informational meeting from the scalp program, specifically on kelp, coming up in February. I don't think it's been organized yet, but it will kind of go over all the background and needs for which kelp aquaculture can be integrated into the Scout program, which is currently really only for oyster culture. So I thought that might be of interest to the trustees and members of the public. We've had some interest in kelp. I know there's a lot of interest coming to the Scout program for kelp culture.
Well, I think that would actually be beneficial to our membership. I've had several of the baymen come to me and have questions about this exact thing that I can't answer the questions because I quite honestly don't know enough about it.
Yeah, I don't think any of us do at this point, Jim. It's fairly new in how it's going to be integrated into the current aquaculture rules and regulations. So I think this informational meeting coming up will be of interest to our membership and also the public.
Well, thanks.
Go ahead, Jim.
No, that was it, John.
Okay.
Thank you.
John, do you know if they're considering integrating the two on a single site, kelp and oysters?
Yeah, I believe that's the intent. So a single leaseholder who is now growing oysters could integrate kelp into their operation.
Okay.
I don't think it's not a separate issue. There's been over the last year or maybe even more than a year, there have been a few growers that have tried kelp on their leases in the bay as sort of an experimental look at how things are working in different parts of the bay. So I'm sure that information's been integrated into the program's thinking. And maybe this informational meeting will give some results of that initiative as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. Does anybody have anything else? All right, let's go on to the administrative payment of bills. East Hampton Star, $103.24 for legal notice. Optimum, $303.52. Mike DeSuno and Sons Incorporated, $800 for Georgia Pond excavation of November 1st, 2021. Do I have a motion to pay the bills?
Did we just get that bill?
Apparently.
Okay. Hey, I make a motion to pay the bills.
I'll
Second.
second it.
All
Bill
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Financials. So there was a financial report for the month ending December 31st, 2021. Did anybody have a chance to look at it?
I have not.
Okay.
I looked at it and there were some things I really didn't understand.
Okay.
But it's actually a good report for all of us to look at, I think, since it's the end of the year report and it compares expenditures and revenues from 2021 to 2020. So it might be a good thing for everybody to take a look at before it's discussed again next meeting.
Okay. That will be tabled. Okay. I don't think I really have much on report of the clerk. Jim, should we talk about what we're doing on Wednesday?
Pardon me?
You want to talk about what we're doing on Wednesday?
What are we doing on Wednesday?
Going on a ski vacation?
No, actually, there's a hearing
On a court
Oh, you're talking about next Wednesday.
this Wednesday.
this Wednesday.
Oh, this Wednesday's the 26th. That's right. Shoot. Okay, I'm glad you reminded me that. I'm a whole week off.
Okay, so on Wednesday, there's a hearing at the Riverhead Court on
Uh-oh.
the contempt charge against the town and the trustees for Truck Beach, trespassing violations and our supposed lack of enforcing that trespassing. So Jim and I thought that we would go and sit through it and see what they have to say.
I have a question. Where since this is a litigation, we were instructed not to go to the beach. So it's a little ironic that we're now have this totally flipped situation.
You know, we're not required to go to court.
No, we're not required, but we thought we would.
Who's
Right,
representing
I'm
us?
asking about the lawsuit itself. We were informed that we should not go to the beach because we were restricted.
We were named in the lawsuit.
No, I know that. I know, but when the court told us we are not permitted to go to the beach, now we're being sued for not showing up at the beach. I mean, it's ironic.
No, that's not quite what it is.
Right.
The issue is keeping the public off the beach.
Yeah,
Right.
and basically, we don't have any police powers. We're not really, we have the restrictions we put in deed that they are violating, and it's suing us. We're represented by counsel, right?
Well, we're not being sued. We are going to have a discussion as to why we should not be charged.
Yeah, we should. I mean, our discussion is going to be we shouldn't be part of this.
Well, listen, the lawsuit said we don't own the beach. Okay, so that takes out our standing in this case, with the exception of the enforcement of the easement that was part of that agreement back when the land was conveyed to Benson.
The reservations.
I don't think they're going to be able to even bring that into the dialogue. Francis and I would like to just see the players, get a feel for the tone of court, and see just exactly how this is playing out, and really to be seen by the judge and the plaintiffs as basically being there, being present, and not being completely ignorant or absent to this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's imperative that you go, representatives of the trustees.
Yeah, and Ben, your question as to who's representing us, it's Dan Spitzer's firm.
Okay, great. So
I
between
believe
you
the
two and
attorney's
them,
name is Erin Brooks. That's her name, right?
Erin, I don't know if it's Brooks. I've only spoken to her on the phone. It would be nice to meet her.
It's Teske, T-E-S-K-E, Erin Teske.
Right.
But ultimately, I think in a contempt hearing, our potential exposure is rather low, given the points you guys have already mentioned that we don't have the police power. But I agree with Jim and Francis and Susan. And it's good to take the temperature of the room in this hearing. And if I could swing it, I'll probably try to get up there too. Do we know what time it is?
I'm trying to get hold of the email. I think it's 1:00.
Okay. And I think we're waiting to hear from Dan or Erin as to who, if any, will be allowed in the courtroom given their current COVID restrictions. So we'll hear back from them hopefully and get a better idea of it.
I would hope that since we are specifically named, that we would have the right to sit in it.
Yeah, I would think so too.
Yeah, I think it's 1:00.
Well, thank you for going, and we look forward to hearing what happens.
2:00, Supreme Court.
2:00. Okay.
All right. Anybody else have anything before we say goodnight?
Good night.
Good night.
Do I have a motion to close?
I'll make a motion to close for this evening.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Night, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Francis. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.